Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this webinar hosted by Danish Sound Cluster. Today, we're going to talk about Auracast and wireless audio. My name is Jeppe Lindegaard. I am the event and project manager here at Danish Sound Cluster. I have a background in sound design and music composition. But in this context, I will be the moderator of today's webinar. If you want to have the best experience, you might want to use headphones for your own pleasure. So let me just introduce our three speakers today: Nick Hunn, Thomas Olsgaard, and Damian Murphy. I will get back to a deeper introduction in a second. I would just like to also present the Danish Sound Cluster, who is a community and member organization in the sound industry, where we are facilitating knowledge, experience, and new research, relationship building in the sound community, and new collaborations to enhance innovation in the sound industry. You can follow us on YouTube and LinkedIn if you want updates on our events. One of our biggest events of the year is Danish Sound Day, and this year we will be at the Royal Danish Academy of Architecture and Design. We're talking about sound and acoustics. I encourage you all to go in and check out the program. We've got lots of expert speakers already on the program, so I hope to see all of you there. And now for today's webinar, we have Nick Hunn, who's a technology strategist, serial entrepreneur, keynote speaker, and author with a broad view of the detail of technologies, the user experience, and wider interplay of different market solutions. Nick has developed products as diverse as laser gyroscopes, sperm and embryo freezers, and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi adapters, always trying to understand and communicate why technology benefits the user. Nick is currently helping develop the next generation of low-power Bluetooth audio, which will enable a new product segment of hearables, a name he coined early in 2014, and assisting a number of established companies and startups to develop compelling products and business models in the wearable IoT and smart home arena. Nick, thank you very much for joining us today. You want to say hello to the audience?
Hello. Well, thank you very much for joining. And today, I'm hoping we're going to have a really good discussion, not just about Auracast, but some of the ways it's going to change audio. As I'll talk a bit about that. Audio's not changed that much for the last 50 years.
Right. It is a very promising title we have on this webinar. We'll get back to that later. We also have Thomas Olsgaard, who's the principal engineer at GN Hearing, specializing in new product development using wireless solutions, where he's also responsible of standardization and new technology access. With close to 20 years of experience at GN and a 10-year career at Nokia as head of strategy and operational development, Thomas has rich experience in the field of audio consumption and use of new technology in audio products. Thank you very much for joining us here today, Thomas. And do you want to say hello?
Yes, thank you very much for the introduction. Welcome, everybody. A pleasure to see so many interested in Auracast. It's a great pleasure to be here and talk a little bit about products. Looking forward to that.
Yes, so are we, Thomas, and thank you for joining. Damian Murphy is a professor in sound. He's a professor in sound and music computing in the audio lab at York University, where his research focuses on development and creative application of immersive audio and virtual acoustic modeling to better understand our sound environment. He has been principal investigator on a number of projects, securing more than £20 million in funding and publishing over 200 journal articles, conference papers, and books in the area. Damian is the director of the XR Stories, exploring the next generation of interactive and immersive storytelling for the UK's Creative Screen. a visiting lecturer at the Department of Speech, Music and Hearing at KTH Stockholm, where he specializes in spatial audio and acoustics, as well as occasional visits at McGill University in Canada and Aalto University in Finland. Thank you very much for joining us today, Damian.
Hi, Jeppe. Thank you very much for the introduction. Very much looking forward to our conversation and talking more about this new development in audio.
Sounds great. Okay, for those of you who have just joined us, I can see people still, the number is still ticking up here. We're talking about Auracast is the future of audio today. And we have Nick Hunn, Damian Murphy, and Thomas Olsgaard on the panel. So, Nick, I'd like to start by asking you, what's the most fun about working with audio?
I think the fun about audio is, in a way, it's something that's so natural. Over millennia, the human race has developed by talking to each other. And we're really still trying to catch up with a lot of that in terms of what we actually do with audio. One of the things that's really interesting over the last 50 years is we've started to isolate ourselves from others, particularly when we use audio in the form of music. Music used to be something that was a societal shared thing. And increasingly, it's come down to something that's very personal, and it's used as much to isolate ourselves from those around us as to actually allow us to communicate with each other. And I think a lot of that has not been intentional. It's happened because of the way the recording industry wants to sell us content, and it's happened because of the way that the consumer electronics industry wants to sell us hardware to render that content. And now is a good time, I think, to start to think about what do we really want to do with audio and what do we want to do with sound, and how do we go back to more of a shared environment with that. And Auracast has fascinated me, as it was one of the things that kicked off all of the Bluetooth low energy audio, largely because it was building on the aspects from the hearing aid industry, where you have that shared ability to listen to things where you have hearing loss. And we've seen it grow out to potentially bring that sharing back into everybody, regardless of whether they have hearing loss or not. And that provides a way to give new audio experiences. And what's been fascinating is how much of the industry is having a real issue with this, because we've got companies where for most of the lifetime of the engineers, they've only looked at one-to-one audio. It's all been about streaming into their ears and not about sharing. And we're seeing people having real issues in understanding, how do you change a model that has become so pervasive? And how do you bring sound and audio back into being a community thing?
Well, that's a super interesting aspect of this discussion, Nick, which I'm sure we will get back to in the latter part of this webinar, where we'll open up the discussion and everybody in the audience can ask their questions. So thank you, Nick, for giving us a quick introduction there. Thomas, when was the last time you listened to FM radio?
Honestly speaking, I did it this morning in my car. But if you ask, besides my car, where do I listen to it? I don't listen to it. I don't have any other devices. It's all streamed audio, either from computer, phone, or whatever. So yeah.
All right, I was hoping for a different answer, but thank you anyways. So Damian, you're at a festival. Two of your favorite bands are playing at the same time. One's a retro band, the other's a futuristic band. Which one would you go see and why?
Always another challenging question. I'm probably of an age where I'd probably go to the retro band actually and soak up the nostalgia. But I hope I would be interested in the new act and think about the future as well. And if I didn't catch them at the festival, I'd go, and I'm sure there'd be a download I could catch later or a stream of their performance. So yeah, but I'd probably go with the nostalgic actually.
All right. Well, interesting. Sometimes I guess the nostalgia can be part of the future too, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody, I would just like to share with you who is actually, well, here's the panel, but who's actually in the audience today, because we've got a wide range of professionals from the sound industry, from hearing and health, consumer communication and product. And we're very happy to see you participate because, yes, that's why we do what we do. And we also have a lot of people in software and hardware and technology, and a lot of students out there, and GTS institutions as well. So we are very, very happy to see you here today. Just wanted to share that with you. So, Nick, without further ado, I would like to leave the floor to you.
Okay. So we all have a few slides to bring you up to speed on what we're going to be talking about. If you'll bear with me a moment, I will just bring mine up and run through a few basics of what we think we shall be able to do with Auracast. For those of you who are not very well aware of Auracast, Auracast is part of the latest Bluetooth low energy audio specifications. I know Thomas is going to take you through a lot of the fine detail of this in a few moments, but I'd like to provide a bit more of an overview of where it came from. Auracast grew out of the telecoil experience from hearing aids, and we've built it into Bluetooth to enable essentially sharing. But it's going to be sharing in many, many different ways. Today, if you look at Bluetooth or any other wireless connection for audio, we're basically looking at a one-to-one connection. So typically your phone sends information to your earbuds and that's it. We wanted on these standards to allow you, first of all, to share so that different people can hear the same music. But we also wanted the ability to be able to transmit multiple different streams. So if you're listening to the TV, your partner might be wanting to listen in Danish, and you might be thinking, no, I want to improve my Korean. I'm going to listen to the Korean. That's something we can do. You can transmit multiple streams at the same time. Multiple different people can pick them up. And in areas where you may have different broadcasts, people can change between them. So if you think of being at the gym or in a bar and there's lots of TV screens there, you could just tune into the audio for whichever one of those you want. Auracast is basically a branding campaign around that, in the same way that people are used to seeing the telecoil sign to say, it's here, I can listen to it. We're seeing, and Bluetooth is promoting, the Auracast symbol, which will be used to tell people, this is here, this is how it works. And it's of a quality that everybody is going to be happy with. I'd like to just have a brief look at where the history of audio technology is and where that's come from. And we've been broadcasting or selling audio to people now for getting on for 140 years. First product started before that. We had Edison's wax cylinders, but a commercial market really started with Berliner's flat discs. They were storable, they were fairly robust, they were easy to sell, and the world took to them. They started way back in the 1880s. It took about 40 years for the industry to work out what speed they should run at. It's a fascinating one here about how long standards can take. For many years, all of these discs ran at different speeds. It wasn't until the 20s that people thought maybe it's a good idea if they all run at the same speed. And we then had the 78 RPMs, the 12-inch shellacs that we know so well. And that's evolved over time, but the basic technologies behind it haven't changed. The next real change in getting audio out to the masses was public broadcasts. I mean, radio amateurs had been doing it beforehand, but in the early 20s, the BBC and others started doing nationwide broadcasts, and that opened up a whole industry of actually making audio hardware. Homes would go out, they'd buy radios, and millions of people by the beginning of the Second World War were listening to audio over their radio. Nothing much changed until the 50s, when the industry basically saw everybody had got stuff, the sales were sort of plateauing and they wanted something new, and we came out with stereo. stereo was probably the last big change in the way we presented audio technology. And it's fascinating if you look back, it took a long time to persuade the public that stereo was anything interesting. If you look at all the early stereo recordings that we used to promote it, they were really bizarre ones with quite incredible stereo separation, unlike anything you would ever hear in a concert hall. But eventually people took it up. We had stereo. And again, we then went through all of the aspects of sort of little radios, transistor radios. We had the Walkman, cassette players, but not an awful lot changed in terms of the way content came. The big changes, which I think affect us now and have really basically set in place the way audio's developed over the last 50 odd years, were when we started digitizing it. First of all, with PCM, pulse coded modulation, which gave us the basics of the audio CD, and that came out in the early 80s. That revolutionized the way that we buy. It created a vast amount of money for lawyers in the recording industry who went and sued everybody who realized they could now copy audio without degrading it. And it then moved us on to the next stage, which really has defined the last 30 years of audio, which is psychoacoustic codecs. The MP3s of this world that let us condense stuff down into a far smaller space, which meant that we not only could have MP3 players, but we could stream. And everything from Napster, Pandora, Spotify that we use today has been based around that. Now, there's some interesting aspects to that, which I mentioned before, that for the first 70, 80 years, it was really all about shared audio. It was taking the audio experience we might get if we went to a concert and bringing that into our homes. As we moved to the digitization, we moved to personal audio. And that's had quite a profound effect in the way that people design products. And today, I think we're at a cusp where Auracast is going to let us make some changes. But we really need to persuade people involved in audio design that these are possible, because there is one aspect of the industry that is going down the route of trying to be perhaps more clever, but still at the personal level of saying, let's have lossless codecs, let's do lots of clever binaural and spatial and head tracking stuff. But there's the other one of, can we actually make this more social again? And I'd like to just do one quick slide to show some of the possibilities of Auracast. So a very simple example here, one other one is just saying what we can do with it. Auracast is not just for hearing aids. We see Auracast very much as being something that will help improve on the experience with telecoil, but it's also a foundational one for anybody that wants to listen. We can use it for sharing. We can use it for quickly saying, I want to connect to that. If you're in a cafe or if you're in a theatre or a concert hall, we can add in sound assistance. So if you're watching TV and your partner has hearing loss, they can listen to a different enhanced stream to the one that you're listening to. And we can have multiple languages. We've got low latency. We think we've got all the building blocks for lots of new audio experiences. So an everyday example will be if you're at any sort of event. It might be a party, it might be in your church, it might be a local school concert. Of what you can do, you can actually build an Auracast transmitter into the microphone that you see at the top of this. And that will transmit audio to everybody in the room. So if you look down at the bottom, people can be wearing standard headphones, pairs of earbuds, wearing hearing aids. Any of those can connect and pick that up. So can speakers that you bring into the room. So you can bring in a complete PA system of a couple of speakers, a microphone, no cables, and suddenly you have sound available for everybody. If this is a conference, or say we're at the Real Danish Sound Day, and you have a Danish speaker and somebody decides they want to do an English translation, they just sit in a corner with another microphone, talk to that, and your audience can pick which one they want to listen to. They can jump backwards and forwards if they want to. It's an incredibly flexible system that lets us direct sources of sound to multiple people and to let people make the decision of which ones of those they need to listen to. You can do that through apps on your phone, apps on a smartwatch. You can even have apps appearing on a battery box for your earbuds. It's been designed to let people design totally new experiences. And hopefully today we're going to convince you of some of the benefits that come from that and start you thinking not just about how do you do the same thing as you've done before at lower power, but how do you provide completely new experiences for people who want to use audio. I'm going to stop at that point and ask Thomas to take over and dig down into a little bit more of where Auracast has come from.
Thank you very much, Nick. And over to you, Thomas. You can share your screen and stop Nick's sharing. And I can see you already have a couple of questions coming in, so please keep them coming in. And yeah, over to you, Thomas.
Thank you. You see my screen?
We do.
Yes, thank you.
So talking about Auracast, I consider this as the future of universal connectivity. And you would say we, as Nick hinted to, we have different forms of connectivity. And as we become more advanced, we get more different ways you can connect with different standards and so forth. Let's see. Starting out with why is this important? Then if you look at what are you streaming today, pretty much what you're streaming is coming from mobile devices. So it's coming from your PC. It could come from your TV as well. And if you notice in this webinar here, none of us are sitting together. So we are all streaming and we need some kind of connectivity. So a majority of the words we receive is actually coming from various streams. So it's not something we do now and then, it's actually something we do on a daily basis. And interesting enough, people 55 plus actually spend quite some time listening to podcasts, webinars, what have you not. So it's really something that is growing fast now. And if you look at where does it happen, and we look at the map, and there we will see that it happens in a lot of occasions, and more is becoming. If you look at this overview, you see the electronic devices. So that's basically what we're doing right now. TV, yes, you get it streamed. Flow TV is not so popular anymore. So it's TV on demand or whatever you choose yourself. Some, especially if it's hearing impaired, are used to also conference venues where you get it streamed directly from the microphone, from the one giving the lecture or whatever it is. But soon we will see the flexibility coming from the digital world with Auracast, where you can choose the language at the cinema. Maybe not so important in Denmark, but if you just go to one of the larger countries such as Germany, France, Italy, Spain, what have you not, you would have the movie dubbed, and you might say, well, it's dubbed in German, but I would prefer it in English. You have the option to get it, so you just stream directly. In public transportation, airports, we have audio systems. I think some places it's well engineered, some places it's, I mean, no matter how many times they repeat it, you don't get the message. If you get it streamed directly, you get it very clear. Moreover, you can get several languages So you again have some options here. So with these opportunities, you're actually opening the world, and it's no longer your personal device, or it's one language or whatever. We are back to the broadcast world, but in a digital setting. We have a range of proprietary standards in the hearing aid field. They are very helpful for hearing impaired. If you're in the church or public places, you will find the telecoil system. It's 85 years old, done a good job for sure, but analog, so mono system, and you can only have one stream. Bandwidth, audio quality is what it is. You have the FM systems, not as widespread, and can be different systems and so forth. We have the Bluetooth. The Bluetooth can be also proprietary standards. It's not a problem if you carry the same brand. So if you use GN streamer, GN hearing instruments and so forth, no problem. But if you visit friends with another brand, using that other brand for the streamer at the TV, you cannot connect. We have, for connection to phones, we have the iPhone or MFI, and we have the Azure Android standard. What is also good, but it's different quality you get from them, different features, and sometimes they are maybe not engineered perfectly for the use here. So a common standard is by far preferred, and that's what Auracast provides. If we look at the availability of products, we have hearing aids now. We have a TV streamer today. I'll come back on that. And just recently, we introduced also a couple of more hearing instruments, so we have a full lineup. Moreover, we also have the remote microphone or the multi-microphone, because it has some added features. So now with Auracast, you can actually get connected very well as a hearing impaired. Having a look at the products, we came out a month ago with our remote microphone, so that's a Multi-Mic Plus. And this is one you can give to your spouse if you are in a noisy restaurant, or you can give it to the one giving a lecture, so it can stream directly. And the big advantage now is that it's using Auracast, so it streams to anyone. Also, if you're using earbuds or headsets or whatever, so it's not just for hearing impaired, it's actually for anyone. This multi-mic have some additional built-in features, so it can be used as a combined streamer, so it can pick up the teleloop signal and transmit further on. So it becomes a hub of sound, if you will, for hearing impaired. Interesting enough, it can also be used as a tour guide. So you give this one to the tour guide, and whoever attends the tour who have hearing aids that support Auracast or earbuds or headsets, just use that, and suddenly you are just a group of people on a tour. Nobody will be asking whether it's due to hearing impairment or where you get your tour gear. You just switch it on in typically in your phone. We have the TV streamer. It's a very simple device. You stick it typically to the back of your TV. You have USB power in, and you have a optical connection, or you have a jack connector at it, and that's it. Then then you're basically going, and those who have Auracast can listen into this one. On the longer term, we foresee it's built into the TV sets by default, but until we have that, and maybe also for other occasions, you can use this streamer and stream Auracast. If you look at the availability and what is going on, then I used to say this year is the year where we're going from a few devices to many devices supporting this. We see it now supported by a lot of PCs, phones, laptops, so forth. Either it's prepared for, so the hardware is ready, just waiting for the software update, or it's already in there. We also see that a lot of venues are starting up experimenting with this. You can imagine in a theater, it's great to have a loop system, but if the bandwidth is about 3 kilohertz, it's mono, maybe also with some minor hissing background noise, you would really appreciate you can get the hi-fi quality in stereo and maybe even in several languages and so forth. So the AV industry is very interested in the new opportunities and started experimenting with this. We also have something going on in Chicago airport, experimenting with how do you actually provide the right information, where you're going to locate your transmitters and so forth. And lately, we saw Google Maps also have the feature built in. So if you look up Bluetooth SIG, you will see the information there, typically given that what is their website and opening hours and so forth. But if you look at the page menu, submenu saying about, you will see that they are informing that they have access for disabled people, and by the way, they also have Auracast support. So now when you want to go to a restaurant or you want to go to a theater or whatever, you can, before you book your tickets, before you go there, you can check it out. Do they have the Auracast available? So a lot of things are going on, and I would say this year we are seeing a lot of experimentation, and I think next year is the year where we will see a solid rollout where it has a very low barrier to get on board and get the Auracast out, and therefore we will see first movers experiment with this and provide it as a feature to position themselves well in a sports bar or whatever it is. A lot of products are now surfacing the market besides hearing aids. We see it in box speakers, we see it in streamers, headsets, and so forth. Some of them I don't even know where they are coming from, but they are there and working well. We also see that there are some things that are changing now. School systems. So if you're hearing impaired students, you can become much more integrated. Possibly we will see simpler solutions in the future. For workplace adaptation, especially if you're in open office landscape, you can get direct connectivity to your laptop. Because if you're using hearing aids, it's not so easy to use a headset. So you just need to look for the black Intel Evo sticker, and if it's on your laptop, then you know you have the technology inside you need. So that's a bit about products and the future. So thank you very much. Handing over to Damian.
Thank you very much, Thomas. And while Damian will prepare his slides and his screen sharing, I'll just pop in a quick question for you, Nick, here, because there's already a lot of questions coming in. Can Auracast earbuds play stereo while their microphone transmits? And also a question about iOS support.
So I've been trying to catch up as we go along on those. For iOS, we don't know. Apple never tells anybody when they're going to implement features. That's all I can say. We quite simply do not know. In terms of the microphone, with Auracast is a term just used for the broadcast aspect of LE audio. We also have a unicast, which is much more similar to the classic one-to-one connection. That does provide you a bit more flexibility. You can add a few devices, but when you scale, you then move to broadcast. So for the unicast, you can have any combination of signals going in both directions. It's bidirectional. You can stream a stereo signal from your phone to your earbuds at the same time as you are taking a microphone signal back from either one or both earbuds. Earbuds now work totally independently. You can be listening to music from one application. You can be sending a voice request back to a different application on your phone. We've basically broken up the traditional connection of the control and the data plane. So we have a control plane that sets up as many audio pipes as you need in either direction. And then we have separate control, and that gives us immense flexibility of what you can do.
Right. Thanks, Nick, and thanks for your patience, Damian. Just thought I'd have a quick question because there's a lot of questions coming in here. So yeah, now I'll leave it all to you, and thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. So a great introduction. Now I should probably, before I go into start on the few slides I should present, I'm a bit of an outsider here. I'm by no means an Auracast expert, but the work that we do in the audio lab at the University of York is certainly very much centered in this world. Generally, the research that we do is about new technology for audio and how we listen to the world. It's also about developing new content, and it's also about understanding the impact of both the technology and the content on listeners and audiences. And so that's what I'm going to sort of, I'm going to center my thoughts here around that general work that we do in our lab. And I'm going to talk about three particular projects that are probably of relevance to this wider discussion. And I guess one of the things we certainly are interested in the audio lab is immersive technology and what immersive sound is. And immersive content, immersive sound technology, again, goes back many years to 1881 with the first electronic experiments with that what Clement Ader did at the Paris Opera, and sort of streaming, as we'd call it now, or microphone feeds from the front of the opera house to a salon where you could listen in on what was happening on the opera stage. And effectively, it was also one of the first binaural experiences. And you can see an example there of somebody attending this exhibition and being able to listen to the Paris Opera using 2 telephone handsets. And then, of course, there's the work of Bell Labs, and you see here one of the first binaural dummy heads, which was called Olsgaard, which was presented in 1939, I think, at the World Fair. And earlier than that, we have the work of Steinberg and Snow, also at Bell Labs, who explored the idea again of a remote stage and a remote auditorium, and how could a remote audience in that auditorium get a sense of what was happening on that stage. And the work that they did pioneered the way for the cinema playback experiences, and the surround sound or immersive experiences that we have in the cinema today are still based on that early work of Steinberg and Snow. And this idea of trying to create for an audience 3-dimensional sound. Well, I guess my first interest in this actually is from my first experience of, I suppose, being immersed in a sound world, which was when I got a personal stereo in the 1980s. And so one of the key things here was the Sony Walkman, which was introduced in 1979. And again, it was about stereo content, but it was probably the first time that we as consumers could curate our own sound world, because we could obviously determine what cassettes we wanted to listen to, and we could design mixtapes and so on, and start to bring that music, bring that sound world with us. And interestingly, it was also thanks to one of our PhD students in the audio lab, Jay Harrison, who found this out as part of his thesis work. The very first Sony Walkman came with two aspects to it, which go to what Nick was talking about earlier, about shared environment, shared audio experiences, and also connectivity as well. One of those features was the hotline button, which you can see here on the slide. And the hotline button effectively piped in some of the microphone in the Walkman into the headphones, so that you could effectively have hear through and start to bring in the sound world outside of the headphones into what you're listening to. Because I guess the designers of the Walkman were concerned about people becoming too isolated from the world around them. And it also came with two headphone connecting points as well, so that you could effectively share what you were listening to other people. So this was quite far forward thinking of the designers of the Walkman back in the 1970s. Most of those features did not sort of make it all the way through the series of Walkmans, it must be said, but clearly this idea of personalized sound worlds and this concept of cutting ourselves off from the day-to-day and from a communal or shared sound experience was something that was bothering those designers. And so that's when I first became interested, I guess, in immersive sound, and also in this idea of how we listen to the world and what we want to listen to and how we can influence that through technology. So the first project I wanted to talk to you about, which is a project in collaboration with the BBC here in the UK and Bang & Olufsen, was the idea of multi-device audio design. So if we think back about this, how sort of cinema technology, cinema surround and immersive sound technology has developed over the years, and how that has translated into a domestic environment, it's about building particular sound systems that give particular capabilities into either the cinema or the home. And the challenge that colleagues came up with at the BBC and elsewhere was, well, what if we decide, rather than building loudspeakers into our homes, we now have many devices in our homes. We have televisions, we have mobile phones and tablets and smart speakers and so on. How about we start to think about designing for the devices we have, rather than insisting on the devices that are needed for a particular experience? And so this is some work that's been going on for a number of years, and we picked up on this in the last few years in the audio lab at York, and we thought about this idea of multi-device audio design. What are the key aspects of designing a new audio experience from the devices that we have in our house or wherever we might be? And that's also about being with other people and sharing content via the devices that we've got. And the last experiment we did with this, you know, I guess if we'd had an Auracast system, it might have made it a lot easier for us, was trying to explore how we might listen to a television experience in a shared environment, as we often do at home with our families. But these days, we're not maybe all absolutely focused on the television. We're interested in what's going on our phones and our tablets as well. We might want additional content about what we're watching on the television. We might want it in different language. We might want it in to change the mix. And so we explored how content can be shared using an experience where we've got main content coming from the television and then additional streamed content going to the audience members using hearables. And we explored different scenarios. We mirrored the full mix or dialogue on hearables as well as on the television, and that was preferred equally to the open ear television condition, so just listening to the television without a hearable. But it was less preferred than the hearables only, so people actually preferred listening to the full mix on hearables most of the time. We also noticed an improvement in dialogue clarity was observed in cases where dialogue in the original mix was challenging to perceive. So again, it depended on the content we were streaming to our test audience, and whether it was sports, whether it was drama, and so on. And so again, the improvement in dialogue was certainly something that was important to notice, and again, helps sort of inform what these experiences might be in the future, and indeed what Auracast might be able to do. And one of the recommendations from this experiment was, although we controlled the whole mix of the content that we were streaming to our participants, personal audio mix control was clearly an ideal recommendation. So giving individuals the opportunity to change what they were getting on their hearable in comparison to what they were getting from the television would have again improved the overall experience for everybody involved. So it's a really interesting experiment. Really interesting idea to see how we might broadcast content in the future and make it more personable, personalizable, intelligent to the audience member, but still keeping that shared audio experience. Another set of experiments that we've done, another project we've done is looking at external soundscape and listener engagement. And we were particularly interested in the idea of podcasting and how we consume narrative spoken word content over various devices, particularly headphones. And we were interested in the concept of how, when we have our headphones or hearables on in the world around us, we create an auditory bubble. And why do we do that? And what is the impact of us interacting with the world as a consequence of that? So we did a big study in trying to understand podcast listening habits in terms of how people consume podcasts, where they did it, why they did it. And on the basis of that, we designed an experiment which was focused on listener engagement with content in a noisy environment. So you can see the scenarios that we explored here, where we looked at no noise story only coming through hearables, low noise story only, and then a noisy environment, then a noisier environment. But then we also explored the hear-through capabilities of the hearables that we were using to understand, again, what's the impact of hear-through as it's currently implemented in some earbuds, and how that again influences listener engagement, and whether it's something that listeners favor in terms of how they consume this content when they're out and about in the world. We found that boosting from hear-through provides listeners with a greater awareness of their surroundings, but it didn't diminish their engagement with speech-based media. So they could still be focused on the story. They could still get what they wanted from the experience they were listening to, and the noisier environment around them didn't. Challenge that, and in fact the hear-through potentially help them feel connected to that wider environment. But we also found that some listeners experienced lower engagement due to noise, perhaps because the noise was a distraction, but some experienced higher engagement, and perhaps that was because of the noise that they were being subject to, as well as the narrative content from the story they were listening to. They focused more on the story to filter out the noise that was going on behind them. So that's just been published at the AES International Conference on Audio for Virtual Augmented Reality, and you can get that via the link. So an interesting, again, both of these projects ended up thinking about hearables, interestingly, and both of them would have benefited hugely from using Auracast as a means to design the experiment, to enable us to sort of, again, more carefully define the parameters we wanted to give our listeners. And a third experiment that we've been looking at recently is this sense of, because we've been focusing or are interested in immersive sound and immersive content, how do we know when a listener is immersed without necessarily having to ask them? So we did an experiment, a cinema-based experiment using a particular film. It was Gravity, and we subjected a number of listeners to listening back to the film or parts of the film using just the loudspeakers from television, and then a sort of much more complete, in this case, Dolby Atmos surround sound system. And we did lots of experimentation and asked lots of questions about the experience and how people felt about the experience and whether they felt immersed. But what we also did was we recorded them using a camera. And so we used camera to extract data from these individuals to understand whether they were, again, feeling immersed in the story. And the main takeaway from this particular work is that we use heart rate as a means of tracking engagement with the content we were giving our participants, and we could get very good and reliable heart rate data from our camera that correlated very well with using more traditional sort of chest strap ways of getting the data from participants. What does this mean? Well, it means that there are sort of non-invasive ways that we can use to understand how people are responding to the audio that we're giving them, and we can then use that to hopefully help us design better systems, better content, and understand the impact of the technology that we're using on our audiences, so we can design, again, better experiences for them. And so my last slide is thinking, well, what does this all mean for the future? And I guess I'm particularly excited and interested in earbuds in particular, and in particular the work that Apple have done with the AirPods as a sort of a very pervasive device that many people have. Of course, many people have other types of earbuds as well, but they've been quite leading in terms of how it's possible now to deliver immersive experiences to a participant, an individual, using just earbuds and head tracking built into the earbuds. And of course, now they've also announced that we can start to use or think about these as some kind of hearing aid device. And that's an interesting possibility for the future. And also the sensors that are being built into them in order to understand, again, aspects about our biometrics in terms of, you know, the impact of our health. So there's lots of interesting things about what this technology might mean for the future in terms of how we both design content and how we experience content, and how we, again, think about how we listen to our sound world, which, perhaps bringing it back to where I was starting from, is very reminiscent of the very earliest, the concept of the Sony Walkman with its hotline and its shared headphone experience, so that, again, we don't cut ourselves off from the sound world that we're inhabiting every day just by what we put in our ears. Thank you.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much, Damian. Very, very interesting stuff. It makes me want to ask you, with these earbuds, are we missing the most important aspect of the listening experience, the physical room we're in, with all its reflections and imperfections?
Yeah, I can't disagree, and that's a really fundamental part of particularly some of my personal work in the audio lab. I'm very interested in how we simulate an environment and how we relay that experience to an individual, be it from music production or soundscape or whatever, really. And I guess it really does depend on what the experience is and what we want to give to our consumer. One other project that I didn't talk about in the audio lab that we're doing at the moment is how we build remote auditory spaces that musicians can perform in together. And so that comes down to, again, low latency, bidirectional streaming from where the musician is to where this virtual space is created, and also ensuring that the sound of that space is coherent for all the participants who are dialing into that space, and that it's interactive, so that as you move around the space using 6 degrees of freedom, then the space changes accordingly to the way you'd expect in the real world. So we've been doing quite a lot of work, mainly from the point of view of musicians and singers working together in virtual spaces. But of course, the context in which we listen to sound is hugely important for a plausible, believable, and satisfying experience.
Right. Thank you very much, Damian. Now, speaking of context, Nick, I'd like to ask you also, because I see Alistair Moore in the audience commenting that the tour guide application is great, and she also thinks that Auracast enabled headset microphones will be massive for exercise classes. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit about where am I as an average consumer most likely to use Auracast for the first time?
For the first time is a really interesting one. And you may well find it's an unexpected one the first time, because you will get your Auracast earbuds. They'll almost certainly support all of the existing Bluetooth protocols you already have. So it will be the first time that you come across a broadcast that you want to listen to. Generally, I think for the next few years, you'll probably find that first of all by an app on your phone. It may be your phone saying, I want to share, but it may also be your phone saying, these are available, are you interested in listening? So that may be in a sports bar, a pub, a gym, where there are multiple streams, typically where there are silent TVs today, and you'll have the ability to just suddenly listen to one of those. You'll see it if you've got a TV with Auracast in, but I think for most people it's that. I saw that question and it's a fascinating one. I don't know why, but if I look at the queries I've had coming in from people, and these have just been random people who have come across my name and said, can you use Auracast for this? I think the single largest application area has come from yoga teachers who want to be used this to just be able to talk quietly into the earbuds of everybody in the yoga class. It is one of the things we thought about, that any sort of room full of people exercising, it reduces the overall noise level, which in many cases people want. But I was fascinated that they've been picked up. The other one is for silent discos, because anybody just with their phone can use their phone as the broadcast transmitter, just using the microphone into the Bluetooth transmitter and say, I'm going to set up a silent disco, and mix between their microphone and whatever music they happen to be streaming on their phone. So I suspect it's going to be those sort of almost guerrilla applications where people suddenly think, wow, I can do this, and hey, it's fun, that we'll start to see Auracast going out there and being an experience. We'll see it in hearing aids, we'll see it in TVs, we'll see it in all the obvious ones, but I'm hoping we'll see a lot more interesting, fun ones that people make up when they discover how it works.
Right. So say we are at a yoga class and we all got earbuds in. Do you think we're gonna miss some emotion and some authenticity in that voice at that yoga class?
I don't see why you should miss it, and I think you may well discover that it's actually more appropriate than it was. I mean, if you talk to instructors in classes like this, they will always say they end up shouting, because just getting over the acoustics of the room, the noise of people moving around, they are having to talk over it. You're now, if you're doing yoga, going to be able to have a much calmer voice talking to you gently in your ear than you will if the instructor's trying to scream to the far corners of a large room.
Right. I guess that's a good point. So I have a question here from maybe that's for you, Thomas, from Mahesh. How many maximum broadcasts can a broadcast source create?
So if you are thinking in terms of how many streams can you have as a streamer, I would say it's not unlimited, but you can have quite a few, because you can stack it up. In practice, I think what we see now on the market are streamers having one or two streams coming out in parallel. I think that's rooted in the practical applications. You don't want to over-engineer things, but I wouldn't be surprised if we in the future see in public areas 4 streams, native language, 3 additional languages, something like that.
I mean, just to add to that, typically the theoretical limit is around about 8. The practical limit today is each one of those needs its own codec to encode it. And because the industry has always designed chips with just 2 instances of codec, one for left and one for right in stereo, we haven't yet got chips available that will do more than 2. They're coming, but it's a case, again, the technology is a little bit above the sort of vision of a lot of people doing the fundamental building blocks.
Right.
But then
Okay. Yeah.
adding to that, in fact, I've seen streamers that have 2 radio modules built in, so you can just stack up. So it's quite flexible. It's much more about what are the applications, what is the ecosystem that it goes into. But for now, I it seems to be 2 streams they are addressing, 1 or 2 streams.
I have seen one chip that will do 11 instances, but that's only in a lab.
I'm sorry, my computer froze.
Sorry, I was just saying, I've seen one chip that will support 11 instances of codec and stream, but that's only running a prototype in a lab.
Sorry, my computer froze, so I missed that part there, but I hope it's okay. I'll move on to the next question. Good. Okay, so do you have any answers to where Auracast is maybe not likely to be common use? Is there anything that's not possible for Auracast?
Yeah, maybe I've been addressed by, and that's due to the geopolitical situation. I've been addressed by police force other authorities that would like to know how secure is this. Some of the radio systems they are employing are not having the security level that would be needed today. So they are wondering, is this a fast track to low cost, efficient deployment of a secure communication? And here my answer is, this is not a high security system. This is a privacy system. So you have your privacy, but you can basically, the encryption can be hacked if you record it and you have really good computing power, then you can decipher it. So some of these applications where you really, in the national bank, at the board meeting, you might select another solution because you need to be absolutely sure nobody is eavesdropping. Applications like that, maybe.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's interesting. I'd like to move on to a question for this is perhaps a bit for you, Damian, because Nick's been talking about how this can be brought to be used, sorry, to bring people together, the whole shared experience perspective. Do you think there's any social and cultural downsides to Auracasts?
I guess one of the issues is might well be how we learn to use it, and how we get used to this idea of personalized streamed content. When I guess in those contexts we're very used to just being given an audio stream effectively. So I think that's going to change matters, and we'll have to get used to it. It's going to be a new way of listening. I guess one of the things that I find interesting, having worked in audio for 30, 40 years, and again, particularly in immersive audio, is that we're still, I guess it goes back to some of the comments that Nick said, we're still rooted in stereo as a medium, really. We're still interested, we still have our two earphones, one in either ear, and that, so we've it is a very ubiquitous means of getting audio content. And that is also now changing because of earbuds and because of hear through or transparency modes, and how some of those earbuds are being designed to be worn all the time, pretty much. We wear them all day, and we wear them for streaming content from our phones, from speaking on the telephone, for whatever interactions we might have. But I think that's going to take some getting used to talking to people and interacting with people one-to-one when we've got something in our ear all the time. Is it seen as being bad manners? It probably is at the moment, I think, but that might well change, and particularly if we're being streamed personalized audio content via Auracast and similar other technologies in the future, then is it going to be the case that we wear earbuds all the time for our day-to-day interactions in the world? I think we're going to have to learn to get used to that as a society if that is the case. But just final point, so many people wear spectacles. We use that to improve our hearing, to interact with the way we see the world. Will we do the same with earbuds or headphones?
Yeah. And I think the interesting follow-on question to that is, why don't we? We've got used to glasses, but there is still such a stigma about hearing that nobody thinks there's anything wrong with our hearing. It's always somebody else mumbling.
Yeah.
And I heard you, Thomas, also have an opinion on this. Perhaps you'd like to add something?
Yeah, I think it's really great that we have seen Apple coming out with the hearing aid feature. It takes away the stigma. And as you notice, okay, I just took off my glasses, but the panel here, we are all using glasses, but who is wearing hearing aids? And probably some of us could benefit from it, or just getting the enhanced or augmented hearing. So Apple putting this on the agenda is actually super great. And I think as we spread this Auracast out, it's not just for hearing impaired. Maybe the hearing impaired are first in line for this technology, but it's for everybody. And everybody will become used to it, and you can tap into the information from silent screens, from public places and so forth. And there, I think we will start seeing it much more. I don't think it will become, as they say in the airport, in the customs, it's not a body part yet, so please take it out and take it through the scanner. But I think it will be something where it's pretty common to wear something on your ears during the day, maybe not for 16 hours, but for at least a couple of hours.
Maybe I should pick up on that as well, that in all of these conversations, we tend to talk about earbuds and hearing aids, but Auracast also works extremely well for speakers. I think we're going to see it making some real changes in the way we use speakers around the home, in terms of surround sound, and in terms of full home sound systems. It's very, very versatile in the way that you can use it and then control individual speakers, which can actually pick up where you are as you move around and adjust volume, whether they're on or not, what they're connecting to. So the whole of that industry, when you just go out and you think, how many speakers do you see in ceilings, in restaurants, in pubs, in hotels? That's another whole market, which is going to be a lot easier in terms of installation by using Auracast.
Yes, because now you see almost exclusively Sonos is in that market. Do you think that that's going to be, that's going to change?
I think that is going to change. We're seeing some very interesting ideas coming out as people are thinking speakers are no longer just something passive at the end of a wire, but you can actually put a lot more functionality into them.
I've noticed some manufacturers, they have some concepts for especially younger people. You bring your own pocket speaker, if you will, small speaker to the party, and these can be connected. So instead of you just have one small speaker, suddenly you have a lot of speakers located in the vicinity or in the room or wherever you are, streaming synchronous the same sound. It's quite interesting. It's a new experience, and it's very much dependent on who are you, and you can personalize it. Still listening to the same music or whatever it is.
And there's another interesting feature within it. Auracast is inherently very low latency, but we can adjust the latency. So as you're walking along, you can actually get latency sort of to move with you, to cope with whatever the ambient source was. Something we're seeing a lot of interest from in people who are looking at using Auracast to cover large auditoria or stadia is that ability to actually tune latency to each individual segment of an audience. And you can do that dynamically if you want.
Okay, thank you very much. I will move on to a question that I received from a person who was not able to be here today, but Thomas Lund from Genelec. He asked, when will Bluetooth wake up and offer sufficient device handshaking that meets the requirements of the IEC/EN 62368 standards for electroacoustic gain transparency? That question makes absolutely no sense to me, but I hope that that you experts can maybe clarify.
Maybe I can comment on that one. First of all, at least he was specific.
Yes.
I don't recall the standard, but I think the question, the fundamental in the question is how do we ensure it's fully clear from, since it's digital system, from A to C, what is going to come out and what amplitude and so forth. A lot of work is going on in that, but some of the things are probably not going to be specified in Bluetooth, but in an overlay. And right now we have work ongoing in IEC, in a work group there, with the aim to specify the transmitters. And it's the transmission layer, so it's, let's say, audio to the radio signal presented at the receiving end, to be sure that it's very crisp and clear what is going to happen and what quality and latency and so forth you are going to support. Maybe, Nick, you know more about the specific standard?
I do. I mean, that is going through at the moment. I don't know we can share very much of that until that's got past its draft stage. But I believe that's being presented in a few weeks' time.
All right, so it's in progress. I will move on with some more questions from the audience here. There's a lot of technical questions that are very specific, but I will take a few of them. Here's one from Pedro Costa, an old friend. I need to clarify this question once and for all, Nick. I know you've already replied him, but I think maybe other people could, hear this again. Are all Auracast-enabled devices able to be transmitters and or receivers and or broadcasters?
So I need here to again distinguish between LE audio, which is sort of a unicast connection, and Auracast, which is just broadcast. So when you're in the Auracast mode, you are either a transmitter, typically that might be your phone, it could be a box in the top of a theatre or auditorium, it could be a microphone, or you are a device receiving it, which could be a speaker, a hearing aid, an earbud that's receiving it. So you have that asymmetry within broadcast. The two devices don't know the other one is there. Effectively, a transmitter will just stand there and transmit, and it has no idea at all whether anybody's listening to it. It's a bit like me now. If the internet link goes down, I will stay on talking. I won't know whether anybody's there. If you move into the LE audio, where it's a connected connection, then you have full bidirectionality, and devices can be both transmitters and receivers. So my phone can be sending a signal to me. If I'm in a phone call, my voice is going back. I can switch that over. In the future, I think we'll see devices which mix both broadcast and unicast at the same time. That takes quite a lot of processing resources, and I've seen a few demos, but I don't think we'll see real devices that do that for a couple of years. But already today, if you buy a Bluetooth LE audio earbud, which probably will be branded as an Auracast earbud, that will support both rendering incoming audio and the microphone going back at the same time. And we've got the ability to do some mixing with that. So you can mix in ambient sounds, you can control that mix, you can control the volume of your earbuds individually on a per earbud basis. So we've tried to build a very flexible sort of set of audio Lego bricks, as it were. I'm using the Danish connection. So you can build whatever audio applications you want. But in broadcast is simply one way. We don't even acknowledge receipt of a packet in the earbud. And that has one advantage. It really extends our range, because typically the link budget range from your transmitter to your earbud is much, much higher than going back from your earbud to the transmitter, because you've only got a tiny little antenna in the thing that's in your ears. So we're seeing ranges of sort of 100, 200 meters for Auracast broadcasts.
All right, thank you. Damian, you were talking a little bit about immersive audio as well. And there's a lot of talk going on about how immersive audio is giving creators new possibilities and new tools to work with creatively. Do you see any new potential for how we create and how we consume music?
Yeah, I think so. One of the first steps we took on the project that I talked about, which was about multi-device orchestrated audio devices and experiences, we tried to understand the breadth and depth of experiences that people were making or consuming that involved more than one device ultimately, be that, you know, a connected series of loudspeakers, like for instance a Sonos system in your house, or the other example that was mentioned earlier about, you know, people bringing phones or other devices or speakers together and building, you know, an audio system from what you've got for a particular event. And we found an awful lot of really interesting examples in, you know, in sort of contemporary art context or sound installation or creative musical context, ranging from, you know, really traditional analog cassette players that were all being, you know, pressed, everyone had to press start on their cassette player at the same time, and all the inbuilt sort of asynchronies in that experience then played out in what emerged from that sort of installation. So I think the creative opportunities are quite significant, actually, and suddenly we're not tied to sort of a channel-based approach in terms of mixing and organizing audio. We're actually thinking about the devices and how we send sound objects to those devices to be played back in different ways. So I think, yeah, the creative possibilities of this is hugely exciting. But again, it's going to require people to think a little bit differently about how they make content and how they're making content for different audiences and different sets of devices. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there, certainly.
And when do you think we'll start seeing some of these
Well,
opportunities?
Yeah, I guess that's interesting. You know, I guess it depends on when the hardware is out there more widely in the world for people to explore with, and of course then it depends on the software tools that come with that enable people to create the content with it. And that will be, you know, a hugely important step, I guess, is once that standard is there and once the devices are there, is how people start to sort of work with it or work against it to build something that's new.
All right, I'm excited to follow that development for sure. There's a question from Anne Rosling Jensen, wondering if wondering actually, not necessarily a question, wondering if subjective evaluation on conversations in noisy environments using earbuds or hearing aids that are both transmitting and receiving the speech signals with Auracast have been investigated yet.
I don't think this is a specific Auracast question. I think this is a general question that we have about speech perception and the way that people manage to decode conversations in noisy environments. And we know that there are people, I mean, of all ages, who really suffer from trying to decode conversations in noisy environments. We don't really know what that problem is. We're seeing some products coming out sort of on the sort of type of hearing aids or sort of glasses that can focus on particular conversations to pull them out. But it's something that I think deserves a lot more sort of research as to how do you solve this problem. We don't really know, and we've seen a little bit of research recently that suggests it's not so much a hearing issue per se in terms of anything happening within the ear, but it's to do with the way the signals are then transmitted up to the brain and how the different signals that look at different frequencies are interpreted. I mean, it's a major issue. Some people report they just don't like going out anymore to any noisy environment, simply because they find it so difficult and such hard work to concentrate. And I don't think Auracast helps too much one way or another. If you're using any form of wireless earbud and you've got noise cancellation, if somebody else, as with hearing aids today, people may use local microphones on a table or just pop their phone down and use the microphone on that as a source, that helps. But we really don't understand the root cause of it.
Right. Do you want to add anything, Thomas, before I move on to the next question?
Nick is right on this, and it's quite interesting, problematic, because we know there is a group, actually quite a large group of people who have what is called a hidden hearing loss. That is, when you test the hearing, you actually hear well, apparently. You have to challenge understanding speech in noise. So if you are at the cocktail party or in the restaurant, and it doesn't help you with amplification, because that's not the problem. It's simply you cannot decipher what is said. Here, a remote microphone might be the only solution that you provided to the person you want to listen to, so that you elevate the signal over the noise. Because in a restaurant, you don't want to exclude the noise, because the noise could be the waiter coming from behind, or those speaking next to you from the other side, or whatever. So there are different mechanisms, different tools you can use to cope with this, but it's a really tricky problem to solve. That's what makes me believe engineers are needed also tomorrow.
I heard recently that there's a new technology, AI technology, that can separate voices, like, and solve the cocktail party problem.
Yes,
I
but
can't
the
remember where
way,
it was, but yes.
yeah, and it's well known. The problem is just that you suppress other voices. It's simply your brain cannot separate it. So you separate other voices, but that's not a desired state, unless you only want to listen to one person. But often you are interrupted, or somebody else wants to talk to you, and then it's suppressed, and you can't hear them. So it's a tricky problem.
Yes. Okay. So there's a question here from Pavel Surta. From past experience with various audio mobile technologies, it all depends whether Apple will implement Auracast. Then, if theater audio providers like Shure, Sennheiser are going to bring it to their products, what's the current collaboration between those industry partners?
Maybe I can comment on this one. I unfortunately have the same answer as Nick, that nobody knows what Apple will bring out. We can only speculate and guess and so forth. But what we know is that Apple also wants to do a lot for supporting hearing impaired, and try to include them as well. So therefore, as we roll out Auracast, I don't believe they will disregard Auracast. And if they enable it for hearing impaired, they could as well enable it for everyone. Why shouldn't they? I would have a hard time understanding why Apple would not ensure that their devices could be Auracast transmitters, as well as with their devices, you would be able to listen to silent screens and so forth. So I think it will come out. Apple is also a member of Bluetooth and are very active in standardization in various bodies and so forth. So it's not a technology limitation or an IP limitation, I would think. When it comes to cooperation across companies and so forth, a lot is done in standardization work under Bluetooth, but then it's basically up to each manufacturer. What do you want to do? Do you want to work with other partners, or do you want to go with your own portfolio or whatever?
I mean, Sennheiser have already publicly demonstrated products, so that is one on that list. In all of the Bluetooth standards, there's a list of companies who have contributed to those standards. Those are open public documents, and you can go and read those lists, and you'll see most of the names you're looking for were part of those standard developments. When each company brings them out, We just don't know. That's a commercial decision companies make. Some announce things well in advance, some wait until their launch events before they say anything.
All right, so now we are nearing the end here. So I feel the urge to express that Auracast is the future of audio. But gentlemen, what could prevent that from happening?
I think we have come that far that it's basically too late to stop. Of course, it's a very good question because we have not seen the solid tipping point where everybody is saying, why wouldn't you have it? That being said, I see it already now built in so many new products. When it comes to the silicon, it's sitting in there and just waiting for being enabled on a software rollout. So I have a very hard time seeing it's not coming. We can discuss when would your neighbor have it, or when will you have it, but it's not a question whether they will have it. That's my take.
I'd say it's also important for users to play with it. A lot of companies seem to be looking at it and thinking, oh, it's just the low power version of what we've already got, and are rolling it out like that. And that's a really boring way to do it because you can do so much more. And the problem is that we have a lot of products that are designed by engineers that are really interested in can I just reduce a bit of power, rather than thinking, can I do something totally different that nobody's done before? And what we really need for this is imagination. It's the sort of things that Damian and other people like that are just saying, well, if you've got all of this, look at what you can do that you've never experienced before. And isn't that fun? Because I think most consumers, rather than just putting go faster stripes on an existing product, would like to do additional things with those products. And as the industry tends to forget that, it thinks in straight lines.
Well, what a beautiful way to end the discussion here. Damian, do you have a final word?
Yeah, just at one point, I guess, is this a technology push or is this a user need? And I think we need to think about the users. We need to think about what people want and how they, again, listen to the world. But if the technology is pushed to a point where it is ubiquitous and pervasive, then it will become part of our everyday lives, and we'll learn to use it and learn to live with it. And hopefully it will make our lives a little bit better.
Well, doesn't that sound promising? Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here today. Nick Hunn, Thomas Olsgaard, and Damian Murphy. What a super interesting webinar this has been. I'm sure that they are willing to take some of the questions that we didn't get through today because there were so many. So you are welcome to contact them afterwards. This has been a webinar hosted by Danish Sound Cluster. And for more activities like this one and network activities and conferences, go to our LinkedIn channel or YouTube, where you can watch this recording afterwards, and as well as all of our webinars in total there. So go follow our YouTube channel. Now, we in Danish Sound Cluster, we have an audio hardware product network where we meet and discuss topics like this one. So if you think that this was an interesting topic, please join our Auracast is the Future of Audio Part 2, which is an online network meeting where we'll open up the discussions among all of you in the audience, and you can come with your perspectives and ideas for new products and technology. Yes, so please go visit our website and sign up for that. Now, we believe in collaboration here at the Danish Sound Cluster. So if you are working with a specific challenge and problem, maybe regarding Bluetooth or Auracast, please go check out our website and contact Tine Midgaard, who is our project manager, and she takes care of all of our collaboration projects where we put people together and we actually have some funding for that. So please reach out to her if you have any ideas for new collaboration projects. Now, that was all for now. Appreciate you for joining us, and see you some other time. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.